Hi, welcome to this week's Raqs Talks. I'm Perizaad.
Faizeh.
And this week we have the lovely and talented Stefanie. Yay! Hi, Stefanie.
Hi.
How's it going?
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. It's my pleasure.
Well, let's just dive in. And why don't you tell us how you started belly dancing?
Sure. So I kind of found belly dance backwards, I like to say. So I have a Western dance background, and I moved after college. I went to college in San Francisco, and I came back to LA, and I found a roommate who was a dancer on Craigslist back when that wasn't so sketchy, because this was in like 2008. I moved in with somebody who was a professional belly dancer who was just starting their commercial belly dance group at the time. They were doing a lot of work up front, doing rehearsals and trying to get a group together, and were trying to find dancers. And so they offered to basically train me if I would come along to rehearsal and if I liked doing it. And so I started going to rehearsal, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'd literally never had any real significant exposure to belly dance or to Middle Eastern dance before. I danced with them for a while before I did anything. I want to say it was maybe like a year before my first gig that I did with them, which is also embarrassing to admit because it was probably too soon. I started doing some group gigs with them, and I was hooked. I loved performing in that setting. It was so different from being like on a stage and far away from people and being in that kind of atmosphere. And doing weddings and doing parties and events like that, and just seeing how special it was to everybody to have a dancer there, and how great that felt to be doing a show and have that feedback from the audience and just be like in the moment, was something that really grabbed me. That kind of encouraged me to keep going. And then it took a little while longer before I was like, no, I really actually want to put time into this and really start like studying and start doing this and making it a goal of mine to be a performing belly dancer. So I started in 2008, so that was a while ago. I guess that was 13 years ago when I first started. It took me a little bit before I started actually training, so I normally say that it's been a little less than that.
Are you comfortable sharing who it was that you started with?
Yeah, I started with Sababa Dance Company. So it was Nar and Shanti Farah, and Shanti actually lives in Portland now.
Where she is. I've been wondering what happened to her.
Yeah. So she's in Portland now. The company still is around, and so they still have like an Instagram, and they still do gig. I mean, obviously not right now because of COVID, but the company still is around. So this was back when they started it.
When did you start with Qabila?
So Qabila, I started with Qabila when it was first started, which was in 2011, because we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary. So I was in that initial group of dancers in Qabila. I was in the very first group. I think Alia has been in Qabila almost as long as I have, but I think I'm the person that's left that was in that first group. And so, yeah, at that time, that was really when I switched from doing some modern dance stuff as well still to solely doing Middle Eastern dance, was around 2011, because I was looking for some more serious training. And it was really frustrating to be trying to do modern and contemporary dance in LA where it's so commercial. And so at a certain point, I was like, this feels right to me. And so I wanted to see what would happen if I switched my efforts and sort of just focused on Middle Eastern dance. And so when I auditioned for Qabila, that was when I had made that decision. And I haven't really looked back since. So that's been 10 years really since that point.
And at some point in there, you really started to specialize in Saidi, didn't you?
Yeah, I've always loved it. It was one of the first props I learned in Sababa, actually. And there's just something about it. For me, switching from kind of doing like pop Raqs Asaya to doing more traditional Saidi was something that really made sense, and I really love the traditional music, and so it's always been a favorite of mine, and it is one of my specialties. I like to think I just love it. I love the music. I love just the spirit of it. I think is really special, and so I've just always had kind of like a soft place in my heart for Saidi. Yeah,
I enjoy Saidi too, so I get that. It's so funny because like when I was a baby belly dancer back in the 90s, the first time I saw someone dancing with a cane, like for a couple of years after that. And she was a hobbyist. It was at, a Mekta Hafla, and she was just having fun or whatever. But I was like, this is stupid.
There's something about the metallic crooked cane that's a little deceiving if you don't understand the reference. Like, I think in the wrong context, people end up kind of being like, why do they have a cane? Like, why do they have a walking cane?
It was me.
I agree. I remember the first time they pulled it out, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
We were talking about the cabaret cane that's usually wrapped with the metallic tape and everything like that. That's very sparkly. Some places they also have like beads hanging off it and everything like that. You're talking about the Asaya, which is the plain stick that's more folkloric. And then there's a third thing called Tatib.
Tatib.
So what's Tatib, and what's the difference between Asaya and Tatib?
They both are from the same region in Egypt, which is Upper Egypt, but it's actually the southern part of Egypt in the Said region. And Asaya is used more in a dance context. With Tatib, it's a martial arts form. And so they use an Asaya, but there are resources about this. Sahra Saida has information about this in her Journey Through Egypt archive and stuff like that, and is a great resource on this. But I believe normally in Tatib, the stick is actually bigger than what we dance with as an Asaya. So it looks the same, but it's larger because it's more about the art form of controlling the stick and showing your prowess through like your control of it. And there's certain movements that you do to mimic a fight, and there's ways that you can get points and everything. So there's a lot of history and there's a lot of like scholarship on that I am not an expert on, but that's the main difference.
There's images in the pyramids at Luxor of like, that is how far back, there's images of them practicing it.
It's even protected by UNESCO now. So there's more people that are doing it in a more visible way in Egypt, especially I think with COVID, and people are able to take videos now on social media and stuff. So there are a lot of videos, and there's starting to be more information that you can find about it because it's super ancient.
Yeah.
And a lot of the references to Tatib in dance go back to Mahmoud Reda because he staged things that were Tatib influenced. And so you can see sort of theatrical representations of it too. So there's kind of the martial arts and I don't know if they're called matches or what the official word is, but you can see videos online of there's like a big group of people and there's the two men doing the Tatib in the center as a demonstration. So there's kind of like that aspect of it that has to do with the rules that go into the match and everything, but then there's also the like theatrical representations that happen and a little bit of crossover into dance of certain things that are more like Tatib styled is kind of where that comes from. It's generally a thing that's done by men also, but there's also, with Saidi, that is also traditionally done by men with a cane and not with women as much until you start to cross over into Raqs sharqi and the crooked cane, which is the Cairo style representation of the folkloric cane.
That's so much more than I ever knew.
I remember watching you recently. You posted something online and you were doing a double stick. And that, I can do mine at the same time, and I have yet to get that two different. That's so impressive.
Two different. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, honestly, the reason I'm able to do that is all of the folk training that we do as a part of Qabila and the drills with the Asaya. I've always taken to it, but you have to really build up the strength in your non-dominant hands to be able to do that. And so spinning the two, and it depends on the moment, what happens in the moment. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't for me, but working on getting it to be more consistent with adrenaline is always hard because there's kind of like how you rehearse and then there's how you perform, and sometimes with the prop it's very different because of the adrenaline. So at least that's my experience, where you go out and something different happens even though you rehearsed it a million times because you can't control the prop as much when that adrenaline's coursing through your veins.
It's true. And you get sweatier and
But yeah, I've been trying to work on my double Asaya. I do have, I think, a video on Instagram because I have performed it a few times at some Qabila shows and things like that. So that's kind of what my Saidi performances have morphed into lately is doing double Asaya.
I mean, that's super cool though, because I mean, it's more popular just because I feel like with the current belly dance community, because we're moving towards being more authentic, and so, you know, wanting to study like authentic Egyptian dance, something like that, and like, you know, Asaya is just fun. Saidi is just fun. I feel like I see a lot of Asaya, but what I don't see a lot of is when people can do some of the more like technical stuff, like where the stick actually leaves your hand for a minute because you're like, flipping it and catching it, or like you do with like the double Asaya, like that. Like I feel like I see a lot of this.
Yeah.
but to see like where the more complicated stuff, that's what I just adore. Like when I can see that, oh my God, it just gives me chills.
Yeah. Well, and Adrienne might know better than I do, like when this started happening, but there's been a trend towards female performers doing some of the more athletic, like demanding things with the Asaya. And so I feel like there are videos and stuff you can find on YouTube. There's not a lot of people doing double Asaya and of women doing double Asaya, but I feel like it's kind of going in that direction. And it's hard because it does, like, I try to really work at giving it folkloric sensibilities because I don't want it to come across as like just another fancy like prop thing that I'm whipping out for show. So I try really hard to make sure, even though it is more demanding in a sense with the tricks that you would do, I try to make sure that I'm really focusing on how I can make it still feel like it is a more folkloric inspired piece instead of like a showy prop piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. You also do Raqs sharqi, and I know that I always really enjoy watching you do that and perform locally, or are local now. How has it been like making a transition from the Middle Eastern dance scene in an area like LA and moving to another city? Because we have a tendency to be like, this is my gig and this is my thing, and you know, and we try obviously to be respectful of other people, but also we don't want to keep people out.
That's both easy and difficult to answer. I'm only laughing because I moved to Seattle full time about 6 months before COVID hit. So I was kind of just settling into performing more here when COVID hit. And now I'm in graduate school. So certain things are opening up, but I'm not doing gigs right now and stuff like that right now at restaurants. And you know, it's been interesting. At least there's a healthy community here in Seattle. Nothing I feel really compares to Los Angeles. I don't know what it's like in New York. I imagine that would be a good comparison. But other than that, the community is so large and so vibrant in LA. And there's also a big Middle Eastern community outside of the dance community. And that's not necessarily the case here. I think the Middle Eastern community is growing. It does exist. It's not that it doesn't exist here, but it's definitely a smaller dance community and a smaller Middle Eastern community here. But that's not to say, you know, like prior to COVID, it was super active. There's a bunch of showcases. There's a few restaurants that have shows. That's kind of changing as Seattle changes a little bit, but there are still, you know, a few places like that. You know, most people have been really welcoming. I was able to start dancing pretty quickly when I came here, especially in some of the community shows. There's, of course, you know, every community I'm sure has the people, and I think it's kind of a holdover from like previous generations of kind of wanting to like check new people out and being a little more like protective or territorial. So there's, you know, there's like a few outliers that are a little more like that, but I don't want to call it an easy transition, but it has been a possible transition. So, because it's, I mean, obviously in Los Angeles, I was in a couple dance companies and I was dancing a lot. And so that is the part of the transition that I think felt difficult to me, is it was kind of a change in pace in that way where I had to sort of hustle up opportunities on my own, which I was starting to do. But again, you know, things shut down.
Yeah.
Because I was teaching a class at a dance studio that is now no longer open due to COVID. And I was just about to start at a restaurant here, and I was dancing at another place that has live music here. So that hasn't all resumed yet because of everything. So it'll be interesting to see when that does. But I started graduate school in September. So I'm kind of in a phase where it may be a little while before I am wanting to do restaurant shows again and things like that, just because I'm kind of focusing my energy on other stuff right now.
That makes sense. This is the time to do that when we can't see each other in person anyway. So
yeah. Well, and I think it has been good too I'm sure for every community, but for this community also, when things went online because of COVID, there's been a lot more access. I mean, for every dancer to, people of the culture and people that are well-respected teachers, like teaching online and things like that I think have been helpful. And again, I mean that not just in Seattle, but for everybody.
Right.
But then there's also been a lot of online shows that people in this area have been doing. So that's been cool. And most of them have been on Zoom. I was doing a showcase for Washington belly dancers that was all pre-recorded pieces. And I think we did 4 of them. I had to kind of put it on hold because school got more intense. But that was a really nice experience because I feel like a lot of people aren't aware of a lot of the talented dancers that are here unless they're in this area.
Right.
And so producing that was a fun excuse to get to know people more and to just kind of provide like some outreach in a way online because it's easier, obviously. So
I was going to ask Stefanie, have you, I know this is a belly dance interview, but have you gotten back into the more Western styles of dance now that you're in Seattle? Just because, you mentioned that one of the reasons why you quit when you were in San Francisco, LA was because it's so commercialized here. And I know that's one of the reasons why I don't really act. Even though I have a degree in acting, I don't really act in Los Angeles just because I'm more interested in the art than the industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've taken some dance classes for fun and just for cross training, but I probably honestly at this stage in my life it's not really something I'm going to get back into. I do also do transcultural fusion. So, which for me is really inspired by my modern dance and my belly dance training. It's kind of my combination of the two. So because of that, I do like to train in things that, support that still, because I feel like when you do fusion of 2 distinct styles, you should be actively able to embody both styles. And so I do dabble sometimes in different classes, and that's been easier online, but I don't think that I will ever go back to exclusively like performing as a modern dancer. I am interested, especially it being in Seattle, I've been interested in branching out to some larger dance community performance opportunities as a fusion dancer, like still doing fusion dance in shows that are more mainstream dance shows. But I didn't really, again, because of COVID and because of my studies now, that I haven't really realized that yet, but that has been a goal of mine. So that's something I would like to do at some point.
I know that I saw you doing your fusion style at Hot Raqs.
Yes.
Yeah, you were really beautiful in that. And then I've seen you perform it, I think it was a Halloween show, and you and Aubrey did a routine in her online hafla, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And that was really intriguing.
So Lumina was her other dance company that since kind of stopped. I don't want to say it ceased to exist because it may come back at some point, but there's no active Lumina right now. But we did a range of things from rock sharqi to some like vintage inspired things, but we also did transcultural fusion, really is what it has morphed into being called, because it's representing multiple cultural influences. Right. And so, yeah, we got to do a lot of fun things together because our dance backgrounds and our vocabulary fusion wise just worked really well together. And so we did a few fusion pieces. That piece from the Halloween show actually used to be a big group piece that we did with Lumina a while ago, so we revisited it as a duet. Okay. But that's still one of my all-time favorite pieces, although I say that about every one of Aubrey's choreographies. So It's hard to pick, but I do love that one's called Bottom of the River. So yeah, we did that back when they were doing Zulu Lounge. I don't know if you remember those shows in LA.
I do.
Yeah, we did that. I believe we did that one at Zulu Lounge, and we did it at a BFLA show. I believe those were the two main performances that we had of that one.
By the way, since I saw this on Facebook, congratulations on another term with straight A's in grad school.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's that's huge, especially with working full time. That's incredible.
Yeah, we do have like a GPA requirement, so we have to have B's or above in my program because it's a cohort program. But I'm getting an MFA in arts leadership at Seattle University, so I'm trying to transition. I've been self-employed and was a business owner for a decade, so I'm trying to transition to something that's more in line with my dance life, because I obviously have been dancing my whole life, and that's really what, gives me fulfillment at this point. So I'm trying to transition into working in the arts sector. And so my program trains you basically, or the idea is that they're preparing you to lead arts organizations or to work in large arts organizations.
Nice. Nice.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing. So I've been very focused on all kinds of schoolwork and research and things like that. Yeah.
So like if you were to, like, whenever we see, because we always see this like artistic director of such and such theater or such and such gallery, and like that's basically what you're training for right now.
It's more so, this is something I didn't realize about nonprofits and about the art sector, is that the artistic director is generally the artistic principal of the company, and then they normally have an executive director that's actually their administrative person. Oh. And so it's more that executive branch that is what this is slated towards. Not to say that like people might come out of my program and go on to start their own companies in an artistic capacity. I think for me, I'm probably leaning more towards doing like kind of the administrative, like executive leadership side of another company. We do have a dream. We've been working on turning Qabila into a nonprofit for a while and expanding our educational offerings and things like that. So that's kind of my passion project. But in terms of more like immediate work plans, it's probably going to be along the lines of like an executive director or somebody. In really large companies, sometimes it's like you're the person that's in charge of development, which is grant writing and things like that. So It could really go in a bunch of directions. I could end up working for the city of Seattle because we have a lot of graduates that do that. So my main goal and desire is that I'd like to be an advocate for cultural arts in the broader arts sector. So, and that's not to say like that cultural artists should change to fit the mold of the arts sector, but it's just that there's not a lot of people advocating for those traditional arts and, helping traditional artists have access to opportunities that they could have in the larger arts sector. And so that's kind of my inspiration for all of this. How that pans out, after graduation, I don't totally know, because obviously it's a very niche thing. So I might have a formal job that looks differently, but a lot of people from my program also go on to be like board members for different nonprofits and things like that. So I'm hoping to somehow involve that focus in whatever it is that I go on to do.
I really commend you for that, because I don't think that there's enough of an emphasis. Like, Adrienne has an MFA. I have a BFA, and hers is in fine arts. Mine is a BFA in theater with an emphasis in performance. I was very fortunate that my professor, who came in to take over the BFA program, was one of these like Ask Abby advice columnists for Backstage West for a decade. Yeah. And so, like every fifth letter she got was, how do I get an agent? So she specifically, our second year of the BFA, we had 2 classes because we weren't doing voice classes anymore. We were just doing mostly acting, movement. And instead of voice, which we did our first year, we did auditioning. And it wasn't so much, there was auditioning technique, but for the most part, it was a business of acting thing. And we have, it's so funny because the person who I feel like in my cohort, who's been the most successful as an artist, isn't even acting. She's an aerialist and she's killing it. And she'll do very much performance art types of work that she does. But she's also the smarty pants that went and took a grant writing class. And it's just, it's one of those things, like, I don't think there's enough of an emphasis on the business of art in arts programs. And as you were saying, you know, where cultural artists aren't given as many opportunities as the people who are in more commercially viable or, you know, more types of art. It's a great thing to have and be moving forward, and to have somebody like you to help in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, one of my undergraduate degrees is in dance, and I feel like what you're talking about exists a little bit more for some disciplines like theater. It is not a thing in dance programs, even in like Western focused. I mean, most dance programs are Western focused at universities, but there's not really focus on that. And it's really difficult, I think, for people who study dance unless they get a graduate degree. And at this point, there's a lot of people with graduate degrees competing for a small pool of like professor and higher education teaching positions. So it's unfortunate because there's not a lot of programs in arts administration. And mine is a little different than a general arts administration one. It's a little more specialized with a little bit more business and a little bit more leadership thrown into it. But it's really unfortunate because there is a whole side to the art sector that can actually be a lucrative, viable, like, career path that I feel like artists don't know enough about until they've tried to be working artists maybe, and they're sort of like, oh, if I knew how to write grants, I could at least be getting, like, you know, working for a theater company writing grants and still be doing my art. It's been interesting. And it all kind of worked out. Like, I wasn't necessarily looking for the program. I knew I wanted to go back to graduate school, and it happened to be here in Seattle. But I'm really glad that it ended up this way. And I 100% think I made the right choice for me. And so it's been exciting. I don't know exactly how it's going to all pan out. I still have a year and a half. I'm at the very beginning. I'm just starting our third quarter. So it's been a lot of work, but it's been good.
I think you make such a good point that, like, artists don't know how to be business people. We want to create, and we want to create something from within us. And we don't want to, like, adhere, you know, to be a business person, you have to accommodate consumers. I've been performing, you know, in restaurants and things like that for 20 years and kind of have navigated that pretty okay. But, you know, I have to really listen to other dancers who know what they're talking, like Katie Sahar with the whole social shimmy, like, she gives a lot of really great advice. And I did a one-on-one with her, and that was really, you know, I wish that all of my belly dance energy could just go towards taking classes and getting better and better, and you know, go towards getting pretty costumes and things like that. But then I'm going to end up only dancing for 6 people, and 2 of them are going to be people that I already live with, my husband and my daughter. So
it's so interesting because belly dance is at the intersections of a lot of different things. So there is the commercial aspect, there is the cultural art aspect, and there's, you know, there's people that are, there's like the hobby aspect also, you know, because there is such a big, vibrant community of that. So I don't like to disregard that and pretend that, like, that's not a part of it, because that obviously is a very big part of it, that, like, community aspect and community showcases and things like that. And so it's hard because it kind of straddles a lot of different needs and things. And I feel like some people have their specific niches. I mean, especially when you are trying, because you're essentially running your own business. And so it takes effort beyond just the effort you're already putting in.
Where can we find you online?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Stefanie Mari, which is STEFANIE-MARI. So they're both spelled unusually, but that's my name. And then I do have a website at stephaniefatooh.com, but it's kind of a work in progress. So there's something there, but there's going to be more about dance there soon. And there's always the QabilaFoundation.org, which actually is info about Qabila on it. So, yeah.
Well, that was Stefanie. Stefanie, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us this afternoon. It was just really lovely to talk to you about all things Qabila and folklore and arts admin and the business of art. It's such an important thing. But otherwise, that's what we have for this week. I'm Perizaad.
Faizeh.
And that was this week's Raqs Talks. Please give us a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Ma salama.
Bye.